and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now.
In the time you have, in the place you are, do all you can. Do all you can.
Good morning. In June of 1995, I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. It's called Waldenstroms Macroglobulinemia. They told me that I had to undergo chemotherapy immediately, and even with success of chemotherapy, my life expectancy would be somewhere between 3 and maybe as much as 7 years. As I was leaving the hospital that day, I was searching desperately for an affirmation that would calm me down. But God, being the hoot that she is, reminded me of a story instead of just a short affirmation. And it was about a fellow who had just purchased a brand new red sports car. Oh, it was gorgeous, and he was so proud of it. He wanted to see this thing kind of silhouetted against the blue of the sky. So what he did was he drove the car up to the edge of a cliff. And he got out of it, and he stood back, and he was admiring it. And just about that time, the parking brake gave way. The car rolled over the edge of the cliff, fell 200 feet, and smashed on the rocks. He walked up to the edge of that cliff, and he looked down there. He says, I can't hardly wait to see the good that's going to come out of this. Well, I started to laugh as I was getting off the elevator. I thought, a disease I cannot pronounce, chemotherapy, and death. Woo-hoo! I can't hardly wait to see the good that's going to come out of this. Well, I stand before you today. It's 11 years later. And I want to tell you, thank you. Thank you. I just want to tell you that the good has been tremendous. One of the great things that's come out of this experience is something that my wife Sue and I started back in 1998. It's called the Either-Or Cancer Survivor Row. And basically what it is I love to row. So I put my little 15-foot boat in the water somewhere, and I row it somewhere else. And we raise money along the way. And the first time I did this, I took a boat named Prosperity, and I rowed it from Key West to Miami. And the next time, I put my boat in up here in Melbourne. Now that one was named Attitude, and I rowed it to Miami in reverse. I just came on down. My mom was up here living at that time. She was 93. She pushed the boat off the dock at 192 and said, row, Bob, row. The next time, which was in 2001, we rode from Stuart, Florida to Fort Myers, Florida, right straight across the state. A lot of folks didn't even realize you could make it from one side to the other by water. And so after that, that took a lot out of us. And I said, whew, I think we're done with this now. So a couple of years went by, and I'm really feeling good. And I'm thinking, maybe I should do something. So I thought, well, the last 2 years in a row, I thought maybe I would row the panhandle of Florida. It's about 225 miles. And both times, the panhandle got hit with hurricanes. I said, whew, thank you, God. I agree. We've done enough. let me work on my golf game. But about 4 months ago, I was in this very church, and Robin mentioned about a group. She just mentioned them again, Devotion. And she was talking about a CD that they had and how she couldn't seem to get it out of the machine because every time she went to pull it out, there was another really great song in there. So I said, we got to buy that. And so we did. The fourth song on that CD goes something like this. Do all you can with what you have in the time you have in the place you are. Do all you can. I said to my wife, Sue, I said, man, this thing has been in my head for like 2 weeks. I said, you think you got another row left in you? She just grinned and said, yeah, why not? So tomorrow morning, we're going to put our boat in Melbourne, and we're going to row to Jacksonville. It's going to take about 8 days. But this has become more than a row to raise money for cancer research, and that's how it started out. Now it's become almost a unity row. Not only the names of the boats like Prosperity, Namaste, Inner Voice, Attitude, all these names are very unity-based. But now it's 11 years later, and the medical community readily admits they don't understand how I can do what I do because my blood counts are terrible. So when they ask me, and when the media asks me, or anyone asks me, how do you do what you do? I tell them simply this. If you would spend less time thinking about how big your problem is and more time thinking about how big your God is, man, you can do anything. So tomorrow we're going to often prove it. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to see you this morning. Is it really this morning?
It's this morning.
Okay, and we're going to do it. We are.
It's beautiful out.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Stars.
Wonderful.
May they last all day.
Let's join them. Just 2 more stars. Sue was actually out of town. She had gone to Tallahassee to defend her dissertation for her doctorate up at FSU. And she hadn't been in town all week. And this was like my 3rd visit to the doctors that week. And when they told me it was Friday, and she was coming in on Friday. So what I did was I went home, and I made like a double rum and Coke, which is not too unusual when I pick her up at the airport. And when I picked her up, she was high as a kite because she had passed this dissertation and she successfully defended it. And she was just really just chatty Cathy. Oh man, this happened. And we were about 3/4 of the way home when she finally asked me. She said, so how was your week? I just said, I had a really busy week, man. Let me tell you. I got the bottom of the boat painted. I found out your folks are coming down for vacation. I got diagnosed with cancer. I hired a new referee at the office. And she says, what? I said, I hired a new referee. She says, no, back up. From what else did you say? I said, oh, the part about being diagnosed with cancer? Yeah, I got diagnosed with cancer this week. And so that's how I told her. So we stopped by. I think we picked up some more rum. We went back to our house. I stopped by and got 2 packs of cigarettes. I hadn't smoked for 5 years. I was so ticked off that here I had given up smoking something I loved, so I wouldn't die of lung cancer. Now they're telling me I'm going to die of blood cancer. Oh, man, I was ripped. So, yeah, I got at least 2 packs that night. And we went home. We sat up on our balcony, which at that time overlooked all of downtown Miami and Biscayne Bay. And we had a good cry. We had a bunch of good laughs. And we finally decided, you know what? let's not worry about this thing. We've had a lot of things happen. At that time, we had been married like 25 years. And we had had a lot of things we thought were going to be really good, and they didn't turn out to be nearly as good as we thought they'd be. And then we had a lot of stuff happen to us that was kind of bad when you first looked at it, and it didn't turn out to be nearly as bad as we thought it would be. So we said, let's just observe it. You know, we've gone this far. Let's just see what happens. And that's what we did.
Hello.
Hey!
Bob. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Thanks for coming.
Oh man, it's fun like it. Thanks
nice
for
to
having
see
me
you.
up here.
Jake Sumarai?
Yeah, Jake. Sure, I know you, man.
Yeah,
good to see you, guys. Good to see you.
Bob is a phenomenon, and I think, you know, akin to what we've seen with other great cancer survivors, like even Lance Armstrong. I think Bob's story is very much on the same par. Here's somebody who would not give up. Here's somebody who didn't want to take a diagnosis and put his head in the sand. Bob wanted to make a difference, not only for himself, keeping himself physically strong, but he wanted to make a difference for other patients.
Day 2. I think, thank you God that we are alive for day 2, because I really thought we were going to die yesterday. I truly did. I was just looking at that sunrise, and I thought, thank you. Thank you for having us be alive, just to see that. Because it was touch and go, man. It was really touch and go.
Day number 1 was probably the hardest 27 miles I have ever rode in my life.
I don't want to do that again. No, don't want to do that again. That truly would drive someone into creating a golf tournament to raise money for cancer research rather than rowing. Today's a new day. My goal is to live long enough to try and find a cure for this thing, and I think we're getting closer and closer all the time. So, you know, in one way, you're a little ticked off, but another way, you're kind of excited because you are part of it. There's no way not to be part of it. It's kind of cool to be actually raising the money, and then to go all the way to the other end of it and be kind of the recipient of some of the things that you're raising money for.
I don't think you could get a better spokesman for Waldenstroms than Bob. He's our hero. He wants to see progress, and he's not afraid to put his personal efforts into it. It's amazing what he's been able to accomplish with his rowathons. He's brought national attention to this disease, but he's also brought the inner strength out for many of us.
Well, I believe Bob has a very positive effect on anyone that crosses his path, because he is able to take what most people would characterize as not a good situation. You know, having cancer of any sort, at least to most people, is not something that's positive. But he's able to look at that situation and ask, well, what is mine to do in this situation so that I can bring out a positive message in what appears to be a very, to many, a bleak situation.
And at the time, I was reading a book by Deepak Chopra, and it was talking about the 7 spiritual laws of success. And one of the laws they had in there was the law of Dharma, which basically says we're all sent down here to this earth with special, unique talents. And part of our purpose in life is to figure out what that talent is. And once you figure out what the talent is, then your job, your responsibility basically is try to use that talent to better mankind, to help mankind. And where those two intersect, that's where you find true happiness. Look, I had spent months trying to figure out what unique talent. And they even give you hints. They say, it would be something like time will stand still. Musicians creating music, or an artist, they think they've been doing this for 15 minutes, they've been doing it for 3 hours, they're so into it. And so that's a great hint as to what your talent is. I finally, after about 4 months, I said, well, I think God might have made me on a Friday, and just it was late, and so he forgot the talent. And it wasn't but maybe a week or two later, I just let go of it. I said, I can't figure it out. And I was out rowing, and I decided to stop down at Bayside, down in Biscayne Bay, for a cup of coffee. And I went in there and I realized I thought I had been rowing for like maybe half an hour. And in fact, I had been rowing for like 2.5 hours. And I thought, the light went on. I said, oh, my unique talent is rowing? How weird is that? I said, well, I'm not sure how I'm going to actually help mankind with anything like that. So it was a couple of weeks later, we were down in the Keys with some friends, and this guy said to me across the table at a little pub, he says, well, now that you know you're going to die, is there anything that you haven't done you'd like to do? And I wasn't all that close to this guy, I'll be honest with you, but I was pretty amazed at the question. And so I pondered it, and I said, well, I'm going to have to think about that. And the only thing I could come up with was, at the time, we were living in Key Largo. And every time we had company, which was a lot, we took them down to Key West. And we would drive over the overseas highway, and the water down there was always so beautiful. And I said, I always wanted to row the whole length of the Keys. I think that would make for a beautiful row. And he said, well, why don't you? And I said, that's a good question. And the next thing I know, I was asking him that if I rowed from Key West all the way to the other end of the Keys, would he fund me, basically, support me by the mile to do that, to raise money for cancer research? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, man, I'll give you $1 a mile. A few minutes ago, you were asking me, we were so tight. Yeah, anything you want to do before you die, and now you're going to give me $100 for rowing 100 miles? And I mean, I'm taking chemo? God. He said, well, he says, oh, I said to him, well, what if I rowed all the way to Miami from Key West? He said, come on. I said, no, really? What would you do? He said, I'd give you $3 a mile if you did that. Well, that was the first $450 we put in to the Cancer Survivor Fund. And so that started it. And we raised $30,000 that first year. I know that when I was first diagnosed, I was 47 years old, and I hadn't taken any time in my life in 47 years to think about the impermanence of life, that no one gets out of this thing alive. Nor had I really taken any time to think about how fortunate I was, or why am I so fortunate? Why am I surrounded with great friends? Why does everything we touch seem to turn to really positive stuff? Why does all that happen when good friends of ours might certainly be what you would consider as maybe better people than we are, but things don't happen in their life the same way they happen in ours? And I had never taken any time to think about any of that. And I think that that's what happens when you can remove yourself from the busyness. If you're raising a family, you're building a business, you're doing all the stuff we do, then you don't have time to do any of that. There's no need to. It's all about this life. It's all about the earthly life. Well, if you happen to be a person like myself who fully believes that this is just an experience, this human part of it, what you're looking at here is a human body which allows me to putz around this world and do things, but I'm actually a spiritual being having this human experience, well, now that's a whole different animal.
We started on this journey, our convictions all in place. But one by one they tumble, each one a gift from grace. We can change our point of view.
Any situation that appears to be negative or appears to be bad can be converted into something positive. And it demonstrates to me, the indomitable spirit that is within Bob, and also by his example, what's within all of us. And I believe that what he's demonstrating is that you don't have to be overwhelmed by the circumstances. That circumstances are simply that. They're circumstances. And how you approach those circumstances determines what your experience is going to be.
It's over 11 years later from when I was diagnosed. Every day I'm winning. Yeah, I have no doubt that I'm winning. I think when I come up here to Dana-Farber and I talk to Dr. Treon, Steve, he lets you know, and he's right there. He lets you know on how far we've come, and we really have. We've come a long way. So what we're doing is making a difference. So we're definitely winning.
Oh, everything's a miracle.
Let's see, what is Sue's role in these rows? First of all, she's probably the only reason the actual row goes on. Because in weak moments, I say I'll do it, and then later I'll say no, and she tells me, no, you have to do it now. You've said you're going to do it. And so she's my trainer. She's the one that gets me up in the morning, sends me out there. She's the one that tends to all my ills and everything else as I'm training for those months. And then for the row itself, she does almost all of the legwork. She talks to an awful lot of newspapers, news media. She talks a lot of the sponsors, trying to get sponsorship from hotels and marinas, and she runs up and down the coast talking to people. She talks the row almost 100% of the time, like for 5 months of her life every year. And then during the row, she's everything from equipment manager to doctor. Oh, I'm up first? We got 1, 2, 3.
Sue has, I think it's a family remedy where she actually pops the blisters with needles. She threads thread through the blisters with a needle and leaves them in there overnight to drain.
Her dad, I think it's her dad, that they were always doing something, and she would always come up with these really unique things. Like I grew up on the Cape and I never heard about these either. We're through. Oh yes. I don't like this part of rowing. I have to be the first to tell you, this is not my biggest thrill about rowing. See, you notice it takes me 5 years between rows. I forget all about this part of it. I think I'm done.
That little one right there.
Yeah, that one's okay, I think. It's a little area called chest and chest.
Next,
Blisters. Blisters on your hands, blisters on your feet, blisters on my ass. That hurt already. She didn't use the needle. How big is that?
this is smaller.
I don't want to
than
watch
Bob's.
this. I cannot watch this.
This is smaller than the one I used on Bob.
Have plenty in your
It's not.
Ah, she went through the other finger.
She's holding the fingers together.
She shot it through.
Dr. Sue, I'm glad you were so good with me.
There's actually been studies that have looked at patients with cancer, even staged at the same stage of a cancer. And those that were optimists did better than those who were perceived in those studies to be pessimists.
I have never met a more positive person than Bob Lynch. And I really truly believe that it's his attitude that has kept him really this healthy and allowed him to be able to do these long rows.
I've never visualized myself as a unhealthy person. When I wake up in the morning, I see myself as an extremely healthy, happy person. And I carry that with me through the day.
I think that one of the things that's been very effective in helping Bob improve his health and get through this challenging circumstance has been his attitude. I think that whenever we have a negative medical diagnosis, that one of the things that's most important is our attitude. And our attitude will really help determine what our ultimate prognosis is going to be.
I think it's a combination of things. I think that I've got great doctors, and they're divinely guided when they treat me. And but the bottom line is, you know what? I'll leave here exactly when God needs me to leave here. Not a day earlier, not a day later.
Where my heroes at? Where my soldiers at? Where my presidents and citizens and all that jazz? Where my artists at? Where my dreamers at? Where my activists and hippie chicks and I know that we can do it, we can change the world.
Cancer's been a blessing in many ways. You know, I think first of all, it gave me the opportunity to look at my own life's impermanence, which I'd never done before. What was I, 47 years old? And I really had the world by the tail. And certainly the last thing in my life I had thought about was death. So that was kind of interesting. That was a real eye-opener, which is good, because that's growth. The other thing was that it's given me the opportunity to meet loads of wonderful people. It's also given me the opportunity to roll around Florida and just have experiences that probably no one in the world other than my rowing partner Cork is ever going to have. It's given me the opportunity. We'll talk about a blessing. I retired when I was 50 years old. You know, for 10 years, I've really lived a life that has been able to give me time off, time to do the things I really wanted to do, including reflection on what life's all about, and to have a little spiritual growth. So yeah, all those are blessings. Certainly Sue and I think our relationship, while it was a very good relationship at the time I was diagnosed, I think it became much deeper. And things like that, those are all blessings, yeah.
My meeting Bob and my friendship with Bob has changed my life. Bob has shown me a whole new way of looking at life and living life that I can honestly say if I did not meet Bob, I never would have known existed.
I'm a firm believer that when you wake up each day, part of your responsibility is to co-create your day. You don't have to get up and necessarily live in this set world of all these people who are living in a set world. You can wake up and make a conscious choice that you're going to create your own day, and that day is going to be full of giving and blessings and compassion and patience. And those are all conscious decisions that you make. Whether it's the checkout person at the store who seems to be having a terribly tough day, and you just make it your purpose in life to make he or she laugh before you leave, or whether it's having patience in traffic.
Well, Bob has been a great teacher for me. You know, one would think that as the minister of the church that he attended, and probably he would say that I'm his minister, that I've been a great teacher for him. But little does he know how much of a teacher he has been to me. Because there are some people who know spiritual principle and they can recite spiritual ideas. But there are some people who embody it to such a degree that they don't have to tell you anything about what they know. They just let you know what they know by how they live. So Bob is a person whose life is his message.
See, I get my results, my blood results, every 3 months. And for the past 10 years, every 3 months, my blood results have been kind of going up, which is not good.
Bob is currently in relapse, and as patients relapse multiple times, as Bob has, the effectiveness of the drugs that we use diminishes. Now, as I said, the good news here is that we have a lot of new drugs that we didn't have even a few months ago available to patients like Bob. And so his prognosis will be judged by how well he does with some of these newer drugs. Bob elected today to actually be on a clinical trial. This actually may benefit Bob, but certainly it'll help us understand the role of some of these newer drugs that may actually help other patients. And so it's these kind of new drugs that we hope are going to change the prognosis for a lot of patients.
Once you've had it and you've been feeling well and you can actually discount it out of your mind, like I'm over the point of waking up every morning thinking, oh, I've got cancer. You know, I got over that pretty quickly. I went through that phase, and I went through the phase of it's my disease, not anybody else's. And I think now, you know, you really hate to see it coming back again. To go through all the turmoil again, all the doctor's appointments and everything else. So a lot of it is the same. A lot of it's the same. I think a lot of the fear of what is it going to feel like to take chemo? What are some of the reactions going to be? What kind of a reaction am I going to have if I wake up in the morning and say, geez, I'm too tired to watch the Today Show? You know, holy smokes, that's, you know, I'm used to that in some days. So I'm not worried about that. But you kind of forget it. You know, you put it out of your mind. Now it's back. You know.
Bob called me after he had some time to digest his test results, and I think it was the first time I actually heard a little doubt and maybe even a little bit of fear.
He said that one of the counts had gone high enough that it was actually kind of serious as to whether or not I might be jeopardizing myself to have a stroke.
Well, one of the things that we're most concerned about Bob is the cancer cells in his bone marrow are making a lot of this protein called IgM. IgM is actually an antibody that's supposed to protect us, but unfortunately his cancer cells are making way too much of this. And most of this protein sits in the bloodstream. As you get more and more of this protein, the viscosity of the blood goes up and the blood becomes sluggish. And as the blood becomes sluggish, it begins to gum up a lot of smaller blood vessels, and this can lead to bleeding with the bursting of blood vessels. It can lead to strokes, which we've seen in patients. And so we're very concerned about being able to get his viscosity levels down. Now, either this will happen with the newer chemotherapies that we're proposing, including the clinical trial today, or Bob may need a special procedure called plasmapheresis, where we actually cleanse the blood, and sometimes we have to do this repeatedly. So our most immediate concern for Bob, which is threatening his life, is getting control over his blood viscosity levels.
You know, overall I feel good. I mean, I really feel good. That's, and that's what makes this so difficult, is trying to figure out. They're looking at numbers, the medical community. I'm looking at the way I feel. And it's a real trade-off because I'm feeling good. But boy, it just seems like without exception, they all think the same thing, that we're really getting into serious territory with the numbers, with the blood. So we'll see what they got to say. A little boy in Africa, he put a face on AIDS. He told a story to the world until his dying day. He said, do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. Do all you can. Do all you can. Do all you can. You're good.
There we go.
Thank you. In Florida, I've had Dr. Merchant for the last couple of years. Great doctor, great guy. And he works in conjunction with Dr. Treon in Boston.
When Bob saw Dr. Treon, I think a year and a half ago, and he was progressing, so that's why he tried him on Gleevec. And Gleevec is a medication, also another molecularly active drug. And he tried him on by mouth medication, and unfortunately, he did not respond to Gleevec. His IgM level was going up, and he was becoming more anemic.
When you're removed from a study, any study, I guess it's always, you feel a little bad. Yeah, when I did the Viagra and got expelled after a month, you know, that was one of those you were just kind of aggravated, because to get in the study, you have to go through the bone marrow biopsy to get in the study. So to be released 30 days later, I think I was just a little angry that, you know, I had to go through that. Well, then with the Gleevec, hello, here we go again. And but that Gleevec, it was so nice because you just took it orally. It had great success with leukemia patients, and it started having some good success with me. And then after 6 months, all of a sudden my count shot up. So I think what happened, you get a little disappointed. You had the hopes that this is going to be the one that will end them all for a while. And it would be wonderful to be in on the cutting edge of a drug that really took care of a lot of cancer. You know, it was like part of the cure. How, you know, that would be a very cool thing. So I think just a little disappointment, but they've got so many drugs coming out now due to research that your doctors just move you to another drug that they think will work. You just go with the flow. I was going through what they call plasmapheresis, where they take the plasma out of your blood and put in albumin, and the whole idea is so I could take this Rituxan. And medically, I don't want to get into all that, but the bottom line was they do it in the where they do dialysis, and the girls there are very efficient, and they put you in those lazy back chairs type things, and while I was 10 minutes away from finishing my treatment. And all of a sudden, I got really dizzy and hot. And I said to the girls, I said, I'm either going to pass out or throw up. And the next thing I knew, I heard them say, I wish you had told us sooner. And I thought, well, it didn't happen sooner. But I couldn't even say those words. I was upside down in the chair, and I could hear them. But I really was like subconscious, unconscious, semi-conscious, because I couldn't really see them. But I could hear them talking, and they were doing all kinds of different things. And the next thing I knew was they changed from being on the alert to really being like it gone into a code blue type thing. And in that instant, I found myself kneeling on a ledge, looking down at the chair and looking at them actually working on me. And all they were doing is they were changing the feeds and stuff, I guess, that they had in me. And there was like an energy. I felt an energy next to me. And I didn't even look to see what it was. I kind of knew. I felt like this was the time. And so I watched, and the next thing I knew, I was like back in my body again, and they were asking me how was I feeling. And I'm saying, well, better, I guess. But I said to Sue after that whole thing was over, and what had happened was my blood pressure had fallen to 90, and then all of a sudden it fell to 50. And I think it's when it fell to 50 that I'm getting the hell out of this body. I'm going up to the ledge because it was like instantaneous. And so I don't know how close that was, but that truly, it was my very first out-of-body experience. I don't really care to have too many more of those, although it wasn't unpleasant. And I said to Sue, I said, the thing I was most pleased with is there was no fear involved with it. It was whatever, I don't know if it was because of that energy next to me, and it was like a light or what it was, but I had no fear. And I'm sure that that's probably as close to death as I want to come without actually experiencing it.
I know that we can do it, we can change the world. I know that we can be it, we can be the change we like to see. I know that we can do it, we can change the world.
To me, adversity is what stimulates growth in us. I've always believed that if everything went along and you had everything go your way, it was probably a great life. And I experienced this personally. It was a great life, but you didn't have a lot of personal growth. Adversity changes that. While you still have, if you've got the right thought process, you're still having a wonderful life, but it's got something new involved with it now that causes you to grow personally. And so, it's a stimulator. Adversity is a stimulator.
It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter what you may be growing through. It's really what matters, what's going on within you at any given time and how you approach the experience that makes the difference.
This guy just purchased a brand new red sports car. And he's so proud of it. He wants to see it contrast against the blue of the sky. So he drove it up to this ledge. And as he got out of the car and stood back and was admiring it, the parking brake gave way. And the car rolled over the edge of the cliff, fell 200 feet, and smashed to smithereens on the rocks. This guy walked over to the edge of that cliff and said, "I can't hardly wait to see the good that's going to come out of this." God sent us down here to live this life and live it abundantly, and I'm a firm believer that that's a good thing. But once you've done all of that and you've had the material possessions, you realize that there's still a big void that needs to be filled. The smell of that new car eventually leaves you. It leaves the car. The car gets dinged in the parking lot. Anything that you buy materially or obtain materially, it's going to peter out sooner or later. Whereas you have to experience that stuff to realize that the real happiness that you're seeking is going to come from within. It's not going to come from without. And I've tried about all of it through my life. The old thing about sex and drugs and rock and roll and hi, baby. We've probably gone through most of that, including the drugs. I'm still on drugs. I can't even. I got my first hole-in-one the other day. I can't even be tested because they've got me on steroids. But no, it all comes from within. It's kind of like the center of the wheel. There can be stuff going on all around you, but that's the center point. Once you find that, then you can go there anytime you want, no matter what's going on. You can have some real stuff going on in your life and be right in the middle of it, and people right in your office. And in just a few seconds, you can go inside and find total peace and be looking at totally different people in your office because you're looking from a different point of view. And that's true happiness, and that's true peace. If I had to script the end of my life on this earth, how would it read? boy. You know, it's probably going to have something to do with rowing. Hopefully it has something to do with compassion, with teaching, with learning. Certainly it's going to have something to do with loving. Okay, so what is that? He's learned, he's taught, he's made love, and all in a rowboat, I guess. I don't know. I hope that people would feel that maybe the world was a better place for my being in it.
So you're okay. Watch as the waves take you over the shoreline from so far ago. Roll with the punches and wonder, but Mama's wonderful show. And roll by roll, and roll by. Your side as you swing low, she helps with the bottom. Surrounding yourself with the unity, line of friendships and sun. The water sprays up to remind you the words that your mother once told, and that's when you grab